Hello and welcome back to the all new, all different #1 comics podcast / we read a comic, because we did indeed read a comic today. I am Dan. I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Gary and Benny. Welcome on, guys. I am so excited to have both of you here at the same time. How are you guys?
Doing great, thank you.
Yeah. I know it's always like hard whenever we have three people on at once, because everyone's like, hold on, I'll wait till the other person talks, and then we end up all talking at the same time. But we'll get through it. We'll get there. Don't worry. But yeah, so guys, we read Deadpool today, the newest incarnation of Deadpool, volume 10 at that. So yeah, I know Deadpool's like been going. It's super interesting too, because I'm trying to think of what book it was. Bob and I read Ghost Rider, the latest version of Ghost Rider, and that was like super high up in the volumes. And then it was Punisher, the David Pepose Punisher.
Oh yeah, that just finished,
like
didn't it?
Yeah, like the new Punisher. That was like, I don't know, it was like volume like 19 or something. It was like insane.
Wow.
Yeah, like the amount of volumes they keep putting out, which I'm not here to like blame Marvel for. I know a lot of people will talk badly about that, like, why do they have so many volumes and everything? Like, I get it. They got to get back to that #1, get the readership back up, and make it, coincide with like storylines that are going on and all of that stuff. But it does get a little crazy, with some of them, like Deadpool, Punisher, all that, where it's just so many volumes and they don't really finish them out. It's almost like you would rather it be, like a 4-issue like miniseries, like with a subtitle or something to make it a little easier to digest. But
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. This is on volume 10 here. And how familiar are you guys with the creator Cody Ziglar? You guys read a lot of Cody stuff, or?
Yeah, I mean, he's writing Miles Morales right now, so I've been reading that.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, Benny, you haven't been reading Miles?
Actually, I guess I just haven't been paying attention to who I'm reading, because I am no wonder this comic felt so familiar, because I'm actually pretty up to date with the Miles stuff, and I'm loving the direction. I actually have a couple notes for later about how some of the similarities crop up between the two series and what I'm looking forward to. But yeah, I guess I have read a bit of Ziegler.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Cody Ziglar is a really cool writer. Really, like, not like new to the game or anything by any means, but he basically starts out at Marvel in like 2021, so like kind of newer to like Marvel and stuff like that. But they like threw him headfirst in. He started writing on Amazing Spider-Man whenever like the Beyond stuff was going on, and was like a co-writer and all of that. And from there, they started giving him like separate titles and everything. You guys remember those What If Miles Morales books?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Cody was writing on those.
One.
Yeah, exactly. Cody's a really good writer, like really coming out of the gate swinging. The same thing with the Spider-Punk stuff. I don't know if you guys read that, but a great like Spider adjacent writer and Spider-Man writer. So yeah, excited to have Cody on this. It's like, a different take, because going through all the Spider stuff and then like Spider-Punk and all that, Miles Morales over to Deadpool is like, it's not the hugest swing in the entire world, but it's still very different.
Yeah.
Sure. Spider-Man is very agile, while Wade just kind of tumbles through a lot of fights.
Right?
In a
doesn't have to worry about as much.
This was a very action-packed first issue, and I think a lot of the action was really solid in it.
Yeah, very. Now, you guys help me out with the artist name here, the illustrator's name, because God, as we know, I can't pronounce anything. And this has cool accents over some of the letters. So
it does. Is that Rogê?
I mean, much closer than I would get, so we'll go with that. Yeah, unless you know anything different, Benny, then that's what we'll go with.
No.
Yeah, we're all stretching here, but yeah, we'll go with Rogê Antônio. I don't know. And he's worked on a lot of stuff over at DC, Batgirl, Birds of Prey, Injustice, Gods Among Us, Year Zero. He's worked on Carnage over at Marvel, done Star Wars stuff. some Batman stuff and all of that.
Also, what I know them from, the latest She-Hulk series, which was a blast. It was full of like pastel kind of coloring and had a focus on these fun outfits that She-Hulk would wear just on her days off, and I really dug it. Yeah.
Have you read the latest one? Oh my goodness. There was such a nice issue, and then some drama happened. Anyway.
But that's the Rainbow Roel. That's like before the Sensational She-Hulk, I guess the mini that came out before that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was a really good series. Are you guys reading the current She-Hulk, the Sensational that's going on right now?
Yeah, it's so good. I really like it.
It's like so much better than it should be, like with the Jack of Hearts stuff and everything.
I am a sucker for the romance, and especially bringing back characters that nobody really cares about. Like there aren't that many Jack of Hearts fans. There weren't, but I am now one of them.
I know. I was about to say, like, I think there's a whole new generation of Jack of Hearts fans now because of this series. It's really, really good. It always sucks whenever, like, I don't know if you guys feel like this or not, or it's culturally different, like where we all are and everything. But sadly, where I am. But it's very like a lot of people won't read She-Hulk, because they didn't like the Marvel show, or they think it's like a secondary character, or and not to get political or anything, but a lot of people around the area that I'm in are like, we don't need why is there all of a sudden a female version of this character? I'm like, well, it's not all of a sudden. This has been around for a very long time, for one thing. But yeah, I mean, it's different over here. But yeah, like it sucks because a lot of people are probably missing out on that series just because of like dumb things like that, and like they have no idea what they're missing. It's probably one of the greatest things Marvel is putting out right now.
Oh yeah,
I feel like that happens an awful lot. Where I get it, not everybody has unlimited time or money to just give things a try, but a lot of people like to dunk on stuff that they clearly haven't read, or they're just annoyed about something they saw out of context. And just like, if you actually try things, there are so many good comics coming out right now. It's insane. There are so many such good comics. It just takes a minute to read them.
Yeah, it's really funny.
Just sit down and have a read. Yeah.
Sometimes I'll post up an episode like on a new comic that I've read or whatever, and I try my best like not to go over reviews or anything, or like watch YouTube videos or anything like that until after like I've read it and had my opinion and put the episode out. But I'll do that sometimes, and I'll go in like, excuse me. And a lot of the people like making these YouTube videos where they talk, for like hours about a subject or whatever, or comic or movie. And then like it gets down to it and you're sitting there watching it and like, oh, you actually haven't read this. Like you haven't read this or watched this. You don't like the idea of this is the problem. And I'm like, God, that's such a weird way to be, such a weird way to wake up in the morning, and be like, I'm going to hate on this thing that I actually haven't, watched or read or whatever.
Yeah, it's a bizarre way to spend your time and energy. Where if there are things that you do like, why don't you just spend your time talking about those? Because
exactly. Talk about the stuff you like. Yeah, it's a lot more fun. But yeah, whatever. That's a whole side tangent there that we don't have to get into. But yeah, just thought I'd mention that. Let's talk about this book then, guys. Let's talk about Deadpool, written by Cody Ziglar. I don't know if we kind of just want to take turns. You know what? I say let's do that. Let's kind of catch the listeners up on what happens in the book. I can start, and then we can kind of go from there. If you guys remember enough of a breakdown, if not, I can jump in. But yeah, this one opens up with excuse me, Deadpool and his symbiote daughter princess. It's so cool. They're in this aircraft, and I was going to say, I had it in my notes here to say that they're somewhere near above Benny's backyard, but now I feel now I don't feel like that's exactly where we are. So yeah, they're somewhere, above Quebec, 15,000 feet up in the air, and they jump out, and Deadpool kills some bad guys, and then they celebrate, and then I don't know, Benny, if you want to take it from there.
Yeah, so they're fighting around with just your typical goons and thugs who have a bit of punchy dialogue, like one of them's complaining about the outfits and the other is saying, I joined because of the outfits, which I'm always a fan of. Always just give your voice to your goons and thugs. And Deadpool is honestly kind of struggling a bit with this fight. I'm not sure if his head's entirely in the game or what, but he's getting a couple hits on him. But with his super healing ability, he can get right up after the punches, and now he has a partner. His like you said, his dog/daughter symbiote pet is helping him out with the fights, and he's able to dispatch them one by one. Gary, if you want to keep up from there.
Sure. Yeah, like Benny was saying, Deadpool's kind of seems like his heart's not in it. He's just been heartbroken in the last series. So he had a love interest there who's not around anymore, but his dog is still around. And towards the end of the fight, the dog gets injured, and it goes a bit John Wick from there. And he loses it, marvels a little bit. But luckily it recovers.
And that's like super. I really like that, how for somebody like me, because you guys have read the last series, I'm assuming, like the last volume, like volume 9 or whatever. I didn't read volume 9 of Deadpool. Like, I'm actually like a little in and out on Deadpool. Like, I haven't kept up or anything. I do know just from like, being around the comic book community, kind of what was going on. Like, I knew he had the symbiote daughter and all of that, but just to jump in comic book form and start reading it, I was like, okay, well, I don't know exactly what's going on. And then we see that the daughter gets, shot at or whatever. And Deadpool's a little, scared there for a second. So I was too, like, I was like, oh, I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't know, what happens to her or anything. And then of course, she jumps right back into place and then eats that, that dude that, is that the same dude that blew her up that she eats? I think so. Right.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And then from there, we find, like, we get to this scene where Deadpool kind of explains to us, the audience, through dialogue with his daughter, that they're there on a mission to find this guy, Henry. And they poke around his, I don't know, pretty big house, like mansion or whatever. I think Deadpool refers to it as a McMansion.
Yeah, they're like critiquing the inside of his house.
yeah, exactly. They find this, like, little secret passageway, and I don't know, something blows up, and then they get down to like a basement or something where they find the guy Henry, and he's loading up like on a bunch of cash. And if one of you guys wants to pick it up from there.
Yeah, he sees his mark kind of making away with a bunch of cash, and he chases after him, and surprise, surprise, the mark is a portal user. So we get a couple of pages of Deadpool chasing him through the portal, and there's even a nice little reference of Deadpool pointing out, saying, man, I won't want to be the fella to draw all this wacky nonsense. Which it's kind of silly, but I do like that kind of humor. And eventually he tracks him down, and he comes across another figure who is also after his mark. Gary, if you want to pick up from there.
Oh, sure. So yeah, after that, Henry goes through a portal. Deadpool follows him with Princess. And then there's this new character there who seems like he might have killed Henry, actually. And he's really cool looking. Like, he has like a veil on his face and some kind of ribbons with runes on them and glowing hands. And he is interested in Deadpool because Deadpool doesn't die. And he wants to learn something from him about that.
I like that a lot because, we're introducing this new villain. Cody Ziglar, like, really, good at that, really good at developing a new villain. And then, the artwork, like you were pointing out, Gary, like the stuff they do with him there. I don't know how much of that was Cody's direction or how much, I'm going to skip the artist's name because God knows I'll butcher it, but how much, was his design or how much they worked together or whatever. But really, really cool design. I really like this character, and I really like his outlook too. It's very different. A lot of times you have the mustache twirling, villain or whatever. This guy is definitely not that. He's like, we've got something to learn here, kind of thing. Like, it's like almost wanted to like do this very intelligent voice in my head, for him, which is not
looking for room for improvement, where most of your villains are like megalomaniacal and everything I'm doing is perfect. But this guy is actively looking to kind of train his skills and find something new, which is a bit of breath of fresh air for a villain.
Yeah,
super unusual.
Yeah, really cool. And I don't know. I'm sorry, Gary. I didn't hear if you named the character, but of course they don't reveal his name until the end of the book, anyways. But it is Death's Grip. And are you either of you guys familiar with that band, Death Grips?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was wondering. I was like, is it a call over to that? Is it
I wanted that too.
Yeah, it could be interesting, but a cool name either way. Like, I'm surprised that nobody in Marvel has ever come up with the name Death's Grip. That's a pretty awesome name. Pretty cool. And yeah, I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember exactly where we left off, but yeah, after their fight, and their fight's kind of intense too. Death's Grip has this cool power where he, I don't know, uses something, and Deadpool refers to it as like, magic fingers, but it's like he slices Deadpool's torso in half there, and
with his hand like
yeah, yeah, really cool.
After chanting like some runes and stuff.
Yep. And of course, Deadpool comes up behind him and like stabs him through the back and through his chest with something. But yeah, that's. I thought that scene was like very, very interesting. And then, like you said, he's really intrigued that he can't die. And then we get Deadpool going back to, I guess, his home. Is that where they are? They're kind of on that stoop there. Is that their home?
I guess Deadpool's just kind of living apartment to apartment like he usually does.
Yeah. Yeah, and if anybody wants to pick it up from there, whenever they get back home. Yeah,
I was just about to say, what was really interesting about the scene with Death's Grip is that he took his mask off like right away. So he has this really cool veil on, and then like a couple panels later, just takes it off, which I thought was cool. Like, there's not going to be a reveal later. It's not somebody we're supposed to know. Like, no, it's just some guy. So we don't know who this
new
person
character
is.
Right? Yeah, that is cool. Actually, I didn't really think about that until you point that out there. But like we were, have been talking about, he's like so far like a pretty like different villain. Like he seems pretty intelligent. He seems like, he's basically there for some mission, but he obviously wants to gain some knowledge, and he points that out too. And also, a differentiating factor in his power set. And then, of course, he's unmasked, like right there. It doesn't. It's not going to take like a cliffhanger on the next issue for us to figure out who he is or anything. Like, it's all revealed right there. His name's revealed and everything. So yeah, that is pretty cool.
I'm getting some cult vibes from him as well. He's got like people tending to his care, people dressing like him and speaking to him in reverence. So I think he's definitely going to take advantage, and just in future issues, I'm going to see Deadpool fighting a bunch of apostles and whatnot. Just this guy's thugs and goons.
Yeah. Really cool that he kind of has this cult built around him and everything, that we're assuming he's probably going to be the leader of. I want to touch on when they get back home, because this is winding down. This is the end of the book here, but they get back home and Deadpool receives an anonymous call, and it's Agent again, with pronunciations, I don't know, Gayu. How would you say?
I think
Gao.
Just
Okay,
Gao.
cool. Gotcha. Yeah, I told you I'm terrible at pronouncing things. Names especially. Agent Gal, and she's looking to put together a mercenary team, and I like that too, because of course, like, you flip the page and Deadpool declines, and he tells Princess
right away he's like, nope, I want to do that.
Not a bad idea though.
right. Yeah, it's cool, and I think the thing that I'm really digging about Cody's writing on this, I mean, there's so many things that I'm digging about it, but one of the things that I'm really digging here is like, look, this relationship between Deadpool and his symbiote daughter could be like really cheesy and stupid. You could play it up, and just make it whatever, but like, he's actually creating this relationship, and I don't know how much of it was there before. I don't know how it was written by the last writer of Deadpool and all of that, and how much Cody just picked up on the pieces, but definitely in this book, you actually like really feel the relationship. It's like a very close relationship, and like his daughter is very I don't know, it's like she'll follow him to the ends of the earth. she
ride or
really
die.
yeah, exactly. She's like, whatever you say, like, I believe, this is all I don't know, stuff that we would easily like see through or whatever. She's not seeing that. She's like, no, this is my papa and I love him, and I'm gonna listen to anything he says. I really like that.
It is very sweet. It's also funny to see in the background there are civilians that are just reacting to Princess and
right?
screaming and running away.
They're like, oh shit, turn the other way.
Yeah,
Which appropriate, yeah.
In the last run, Princess was kind of a comedy character. There were lots of jokes about her, but now Deadpool lost kind of everything since the last run. It feels like this run is taking a bit of a more emotional direction where he's like, this is what I got left now. Is this dog. So it makes sense that he's kind of getting more attached to her, which I think is cute. And there's some other things throughout the issue that maybe we can talk about later, where I think from my interpretation of it, like Deadpool's state of mind is really changing.
Yeah, I definitely don't think he's in a good space right now.
Right? Yeah. I mean, he's definitely not. He's talking about how well he's not doing, basically. Which is good. It's good to see that kind of thing here. I think that Cody's good at exploring stuff like that, as we've been able to see through some of his other work and everything. Talking about how you're feeling and stuff like that is something that Cody kind of brings up every now and again. So yeah, really cool. I'm liking the fact that again, like, most of the Deadpool that I've like followed, thoroughly or whatever, has been like the Brian Posehn stuff or something like that. It's actually been a little while since I've really dove into a Deadpool book and read the first issue and all of that. And a lot of times, I'm not going to lie, like they're a little too, lean into like the comedy side or whatever. And like, I want to see more of that, like, not holding back, like mercenary stuff and everything. And I think that the mix here is so good. And like you guys were just pointing out, like the emotional part of it is really, really good too. So like, it's a really good mix of everything here. I'm really digging the way this is written.
I think Deadpool is a very tricky character to handle because you had his inception all the way back in X-Force, where he was a mercenary with a bit of stylistic choices, and then that kind of grew into like the XD random era where he was talking endlessly about chimichangas and stuff, and then it gets into what I think is the most solid Deadpool run, where he's the merc with the mouth, but he does have some personal grievances that he's trying to work through. And this is kind of a return to form for Deadpool, where he loses everything and he just has to throw himself into his work and kind of distract himself from his personal life for a while. And I'm hoping that Cody Ziglar does some fun stuff talking about mental health. I think he's really shown his chops with Miles going to therapy and struggling with everything that's going on in his personal life. So I was apprehensive about returning to base for Deadpool, but I think it's a good foundation to build upon.
Yeah, completely agreed. And like you said, bringing like some of that mental health awareness into it. Like Cody is good at that. Like almost like telling you like, hey, sometimes you gotta like stop, check in on yourself, like see how you're doing, see if you got some stuff you need to process, which is like super true. And again, it's one of those things that I think that people like the three of us like recognize and all of that, but you do have your audience who tries to shy away from that kind of thing, like they don't want to hear about that kind of stuff or whatever. So I like that Cody is playing to his strengths and talking about stuff like that, because I think it's really important. Normalizing mental health, and this has been talked about before, this isn't like anything new or anything like that, but normalizing that we're not always all okay all the time. Sometimes we're going through stuff and it needs to be addressed, just like you would I don't know, like get a super bad cut on your arm and maybe go to the doctor and get stitches or something, sometimes you're going through something emotional and you need to stop and think like, hey, do I need to get some help? Do I need to talk about this or whatever? So I like that there's threads being laid down for that kind of thing in this book. I think it's really important and really cool. Getting back to the story, where we left off was, Deadpool declining, I don't know, putting together that team with the agent and everything, and talking to Princess about putting together their own team. And then we see Death's grip at the end, being revealed and all of that. And kind of like, again, I hate to say the same thing, but like laying down those threads of what's gonna, come later. He's very, very intrigued by Deadpool's regenerative, non-dyingness or however I'm supposed to word that. But what do you guys think about that? Like, how is he going to like learn something from Deadpool and apply that to himself? Have you seen anything like that happen before in like a Deadpool comic?
No, I'm kind of worried what they're going to do because they're all mystical. They look kind of culty.
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried they're going to, I don't know, like experiment on him or do some kind of. It would be nice if they did some magic. Actually, there are a lot of like things in comics tend to be like science. They're like dissect somebody and like take out their DNA or whatever. But if it's like a more mystical take on that, that's more interesting, I think, than doing like cloning or whatever again. But it doesn't seem like it's going to be nice, whatever it is.
Right. That's happened before where somebody scientifically tries to take his powers. Like a bunch of Skrulls took his healing powers, and because they didn't do their research, they immediately realized that, without the cancer, the healing kind of goes overboard and you just grow a bunch of tumors. But if you take a mystical investigation to Deadpool, I think you could, that would be a lot more successful. Death's grip looks like he sits down and does like his research, pouring through books and stuff. So I think he might take his time with Deadpool. And you're right, Gary. We don't see enough of the mystical side of Marvel these days. A lot of it is heavy into the sci-fi, so I would love to lean a bit into magic, especially for a character like Deadpool, who was married to a queen of one of the hells or something for a while, which could tie it back to some of his older history.
Yeah, and that's again, like we kind of have pointed out, we only get a few panels of Death's grip. Like, it's not like he's all throughout this book. He only shows up, in the very end and everything. And just by those little bit of interactions and that little bit of dialogue and everything, like we can all three kind of tell here that he's a very like intelligent person. That's why, Benny's, you were talking about, he seems like well-read. He seems like he's going to do his research into things. That's pretty impressive that Cody and the artist here are able to pull that off in just such few panels. Intelligence is something that obviously I don't know much about because I can't even talk, but but it's something that's got to be like hard to portray like in just a few series of panels. Like, you would think that would take a full book or multiple books to kind of say, all right, this is a very intelligent person who's well-read, well-spoken, who does a lot of research and all of that. But yeah, they're able to get that across on the page here very quickly, which I think is a sign of really good writing. So
yeah, some good characterization in this comic for heroes and villains.
Yeah, definitely. So how about the last little thing here? Because of course, the book kind of ends and then we get that.
It's like a post-credits almost.
Yeah, right. The Marvel, the MCU post-credit scene. Somebody please jump in and talk about that. I promise you'll do it much better than me. So,
go ahead.
I was going to ask you to go ahead actually, because after this, like we get like the end page and you see Death's grip, and then there's like the next issue advertisement, and then you get like it's one of Deadpool's. I think he has 2 daughters. Is that right? Is that getting that mixed up?
He has like symbiote daughter and Ellie, his other kid,
an actual human daughter. But I haven't read anything with her in it before, so I don't know where she actually comes from, who her mom is.
Oh,
But
how about
like
there's some dead prostitute, I think, that Deadpool had
no.
one encounter with?
Oh, when was this? Because I read a bunch of Deadpool, but I haven't seen this part.
This was
Well,
the
anyway.
2016 one where he kills a bunch of presidents, I think.
Oh,
you know what?
yes,
That's
yes,
the one.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Gary Duggan. I started that one, and I'm not American, so I stopped because I didn't know enough about the president to really get what was happening. So
Yeah.
I haven't read that much. So yeah, he has an actual human daughter who he it seems like he kind of abandoned. But
straight up, yeah.
he goes back to talk to her, and she's not mad with him at all. She's really happy to see him, and she doesn't want him to leave. But it seems like their relationship is not very good, and he gives her a cell phone, and he says, like, if you call me with this cell phone, I'm going to answer it, no matter what time of day it is, no matter what it's about, just call me. And like he's trying to reconnect with her, which is really sweet.
Yeah, it really is. I wondered too. I was like, the way they're pressing on how important this cell phone is in this relationship, and how he keeps saying like, I'll answer it no matter what and everything. I'm like, are they just setting us up for disappointment? You know, where she, you know, he's going to be in the middle of something and she's going to call and he's not going to answer, and then she's like, he always does this or something. Like, I was wondering what the point of that was. But
yeah, I really wonder. Because
yeah, I do think it is a setup for something like that.
Yeah, it's like everything is not quite spelled out throughout this book. You know, like I said, there's a lot of nuance and they do a lot of stuff with the characters and with the story that they're telling. But that one did seem like, okay, is this just a setup for him not to answer the phone when she calls? Because it was just emphasized so much.
Yeah, that would be the obvious way to go for drama. But I really wonder
Right.
if that's what Cody Ziglar would do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, maybe I'm not putting enough faith, and I should be, because he's proven himself already, just in this first issue that he really, knows what he's doing. So yeah, that could go any which way. That was just my first, kind of impression. But yeah, that's how the book wraps up. And one of the last thing that I want to talk about before we just go to like our straight thoughts and everything is the little next, the preview of issue number 2, and it's got not a silhouette, but like this big, I don't know how you word that, but it shows Death's grip like there in the background, like a big part of his head, and then it's got Deadpool fighting and Taskmaster right behind him.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's I'm excited to see that team up. And if you look at the bottom of the picture there's a whole bunch of hands, coming up.
Skeleton hands.
Right? Yeah, it looks like it's like, I don't know, an undead army or hell or something. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there, but it looks really cool. Looks like this second issue might be a lot of fun. So yeah, I definitely cannot wait to read that. And let's go into that really quick before we go into like, just our thoughts on the book and everything. I assume, I guess let me speak for myself first. I definitely want to read issue number 2. This was definitely enough to make me want to check out issue number 2. And I'd like to hear y'all's thoughts on that also.
Well, I think I am going to stop in for issue number 2. Cody has built up a lot of good faith in me with his Miles run, and I'm a fan of Antonio's art style. Even if it didn't really wow me this first issue, I do think it has the chops for a good run.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Gary?
Yeah, actually, I was going to say something similar to you, Benny, where the art looks a kind of, I don't know how to put it in a way that's not too overcritical. Like it's not bad at all, but it's also not anything that's going to grab you. It's really safe. Does that make sense? Like it's really like, that sure is a comic book. Like it's not bad at all by any means, but it's not like, it's not extremely like stylized either, I think. But I would still definitely read the second issue.
And Bob and I talk about that sometimes too, whenever we're going over like the regular like weekly episodes. Like it's almost like you have this house of artists over at Marvel and DC, and they're like, we refer to them as like the house or the stock, like artists. Like you know what you're gonna get. Like it's very safe. It's good art. Like it's it's not by any means that you pick it apart and be like, this is horrible or this is this, but like there's definitely like no chances being taken or anything. Like it's not like you're throwing like a Bill Sienkiewicz, a Mike Allred, like a David, like anything like stylistic. It's like their house style.
Yeah, Gary, I
Which
think
is
you hit the
interesting.
head on the nail with saying that it's very safe.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah,
Oh, I'm glad I
it's not
wasn't just
offensive
me.
at all. But yeah, it is very safe.
But that said, though, I really like the design for Death Grip. He looks
Yeah, me
awesome.
too. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
the page
likewise.
where Princess was jumping around chasing the motorcycle was really cool.
Yeah,
It's
and
laid
that
out
wasn't my
so well.
favorite. Yeah, I definitely wanted to talk about that. That and for the listener, that's a double page spread. That's a it's a double page, and I mean, can I refer to it as a splash since it's got like breaks in it, or I don't know if I still call that a splash or not. But
Like it kind of has, but it's because the dog's going through portals. It's
yeah,
connecting them together. It's really cool.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so cool because it's a high speed chase, but it's on a motorcycle. It's on a symbiote dog. It's through portals. Like there's so much going on in that on those 2 pages. There, really, really cool. I actually really liked that a lot. And that's where we got like one of our big meta call outs in the book. And I think one of you talked about this. It might be you, Benny. I can't remember, but
Yeah.
yeah. Whenever you were like kind of retelling that part, that it's called out there. Like I feel bad for the artist that has to illustrate this or whatever. That's one of the things I will say this. When it comes to Deadpool, and I think I touched on this earlier, it can be so overdone with the comedy. It can be so overdone with the breaking the fourth wall and all of that. It's one of those things where when it first, happens, like the first few times you read Deadpool or whatever, you're like, oh, this is cool. This is interesting. This is different. And then sometimes it's like, okay, we get it. Like it's a funny book. It's, a gory book. It's a meta book. Like we get it. Like chill, but this didn't have a lot of that. It had a couple of calls and that was really it. So I think that, this was a good balance of all of that.
Yeah, it's in that sweet spot of moderation.
Yes.
There were a couple of times where Deadpool was like, I don't have a joke lined up for this. Where it's like he's not, his heart's not in it anymore. Like the jokes aren't coming to him naturally. Like he's trying to prepare himself ahead of time, and he's like, I just wasn't prepared for it. Like it really feels like he's not giving up, but like he's just not the same
not
as he
trying.
usually is. Yeah, I feel like he's heartbroken and like his heart's not in his work anymore. And that's why I think towards the end he realizes like, well, I want to reconnect with my daughter and I want to like start my own mercenary agency and surround myself with people again, which I thought was really cool. I don't know if that's just my like interpretation of it, but that's what I got from the comic. So because of all that, I definitely want to read number 2.
Yeah, definitely. And I had something here and I can't remember what it was. Oh, okay, sorry. Just going through like stray thoughts about the book. If anybody has any, please jump in. But one of the things that I wanted to point out, and I'm not very familiar with the source material, but there's a Chainsaw Man reference in here. So are either of you like big Chainsaw Man fans?
I am, actually.
Okay.
Dan, I know you're not the largest fan of manga, but Chainsaw Man is one of the ones that has really gripped me the last couple of years for its distinct art style. And I was really surprised to see Chainsaw Man in reference in a comic like this. And it was a reference that like spanned the whole page with him doing the fox hand gesture for a princess to eat the bad guy. And I think that if Cody kind of leans into that side of Wade Wilson where he's kind of a nerdy fan of stuff, that it could be really good. Like Miles has been shown to be a huge anime fan and fan of Goku, and it's really lending well to that comic, and I think it could only do good for Wade as well.
Now, Gary, is there like a big presence of something like Chainsaw Man in Japan where you are?
Yeah. So,
okay, gotcha.
Like anime comes in seasons, and there's usually one that's like the big one that's everywhere, like so much that you'll see it at the convenience store on packaging, and it's like inescapable and everywhere. Chainsaw Man's a little bit more adult, so it's not so much like family friendly like that, but it's still popular enough that you'll see it around like everywhere.
Gotcha. Ooh. And let me say this, just to like get this out of the way. I have pointed out before, yeah, like I've never really gotten into like any manga or anime or anything like that. Manga, sorry, I always say it wrong. But I'm not like opposed to any of it at all. It's just I'm old. I mean, you can tell by the gray in my beard, but yeah, like I'm old. Like and like it's not the get off my lawn thing at all. Like I have no problem with it. It's just the fact that I surround myself with so many comic books. I'm like, I don't know how to like, I don't even know where to start, but it feels very ignorant. I feel like I should, because you're seeing a lot of reference and a lot of influence come into modern comics through manga. And it's really starting to creep in and everything. And I think that's great because, whether that's turning more people on to like the superhero genre or whether it's just including people who like, different things and stuff like that. I think that that's really cool. I loved this reference, even though I knew absolutely nothing about it. But I thought it was really cool. And like you pointed out, Benny, it shows like this side of Wade that, maybe we didn't know as much about. Like he's into nerdy shit. Like, he likes to read manga or watch anime or read comic books or whatever. And I like that. I think that that's really cool. So I am 110% open to any suggestions that either of you or any of the audience might have to get me started, at least. I have a few, there's a couple laying around. I have this really cool witches book up in my closet there that I need to pull out, maybe show you guys at some point. You can tell me if it's any good and I should read it or not. But yeah, I'd love to try to get into manga, something very accessible. So if anybody has any suggestions, please feel free. But
oh my gosh,
yeah,
that's
I'll
really
definitely.
I know that's opening a door, right?
That'll take me a while to think of some answers, but I'll try and think of something to send your way, Daniel.
Yeah,
it's great that you're looking to another medium like that. I think more people should be kind of that adventurous and break out from what they're kind of used to, because yeah, it's a whole nother medium.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, from what I can tell, there's some really great stories out there, some really well illustrated stuff. And this is just a side tangent, and I'll get out of it really quick, I promise. But a little while ago, I had on Lonnie Nadler and Jenna Cha, and they do the book called The Sickness, and it is a horror comic. I don't know if either of you are familiar with it. I think it's on issue 5 right now. It's from Uncivilized. It is the coolest book I've ever seen in my life. I love it so much. Jenna's art is like the most amazing thing you'll ever see ever. So if you guys have a chance, Google it after we get done or something, just look up some of the art in there. But really well written, really well illustrated. And when I talked to them about it, Jenna was like, yeah, it has this huge influence from somebody whose name I would not be able to say, but a really, really big horror manga creator.
Oh, it looks like Shintaro Kago.
What do you think of? What's that?
I looked it up just now. Was it Shintaro Kago?
Yes.
Yeah, I can tell from the cover that looks just like his stuff.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Yeah. Some really, really cool stuff. So that's really cool. I strongly suggest anybody check that out if you can. That's a really, really good book. Yeah. Really cool. But yeah, just getting back to Deadpool and all of that, we all three, definitely plan to move on to issue number 2 and definitely recommend it. And I think I covered my stray thoughts, unless please jump in if either of you have any stray thoughts you want to say about it.
There is, going back to that Madame Gao reference, it seems that Zilgar has a clear idea of his section of the Marvel Universe. And I'm looking forward to what Cody's cooking up.
Yeah, definitely. Likewise. How about this then? Do you guys have any predictions for issue number 2 or anything that you really want to see? I can start if you guys want to formulate some thoughts while I talk for a sec. But I think first and foremost, I'm really hoping that and he's shadowed here on the cover of issue number 2. So I'm really hoping we dive into Death's Grip a little bit more. I'm hoping there's a big emphasis on that. And of course, whatever is going on the cover here, it looks like Taskmaster and are definitely going to have to fight off some kind of army or whatever, and that's cool. But I definitely want to learn more about Death's Grip, and I hope that he kind of has like a staying, that he kind of sticks around for a little bit, and he's not just defeated in this first story arc or anything, because I'm really intrigued by this villain.
Gary, any predictions?
I don't know. Yeah, it looks like he's at least working with Taskmaster for one job. I don't know if Taskmaster is the kind of guy that would join a mercenary company, but maybe.
Right? Yeah.
That makes me wonder who else he's got. If he's got Taskmaster, like, who else can you get? That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, I want to see how his team gets fleshed out. So the threads that are being left behind here, the Death's Grip threads, the mercenary team, knowing that we're getting Taskmaster team up, like really, really cool, interesting stuff. Cody and the artists here are just really doing a lot with this book. Really, really fun. And I guess, that's, brings us towards the end here. Again, like, unless anybody has anything else they want to say about it or any other predictions.
I got a final prediction. I think there is going to be one issue in the middle of this series where Princess and Deadpool's other daughter, Ellie or whatever, are it's just the two of them for a little while, and they'll butt heads for a bit, but it'll end with some sisterly bonding.
I hope so. That sounds so nice.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. I'd almost love to see a sisterhood of the traveling pants with Ellie and Princess. So I'd be cool with that.
Princess is too cute.
Right. Well, look, guys, this was a lot of fun. I'm actually really glad that we read this book and I had you guys both on to talk about it. I think the conversation that we were, able to have here about this book, again, was really enjoyable. I'm really happy that you were both on to talk to me about it. And I guess, with that being said, thank you guys so much for your time. Thank you so much. And let's do this again soon. Benny, I know we got, what is it? We got another Ultimate book coming out next week where I don't know if you want to touch on Ultimate X-Men 2, but I definitely do. So hit me up if you do. And hopefully we'll return for that. And Gary, of course, you're always welcome as well, but we'll talk off air about all of that. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and we will see you guys next time.
Yeah, thank
you. Take care.
Bye.
Hello and welcome back to the all new, all different #1 comics podcast. I'm here doing a special creator interview, and on the line right now we have Derick Jones. Derick, what's happening, dude? How are you? Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk to us.
Hell yeah, dude. No worries. I'm stoked to be here. Dan, I like how you hesitated on Jones for a quick second.
Hey, I warned you. I'm like, wait a second.
Like, wait a second.
Can I mess this name up? Yeah.
No,
I can't. If there's anybody who can, it's me. So,
yeah. No, I'm stoked to be here, dude.
Yeah, awesome. Really, really glad to have you here. And for everybody listening, Derick is actually, like traveling right now, like on a little vacay. So, yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to talk to us and definitely, to talk about your new book, Nosebleed, which I've read like 3 times since you sent it to me. God, man, I really love this book. I'm really actually super stoked about it. So, yeah, really excited to talk about this. I can't wait for my my regular co-host. He doesn't do the interviews with me usually, but Bob to read this, because he's like, when we started the podcast, he's like, I'm a superhero guy, don't like horror books, all this. I'm like, okay, but we always do like a randomized drawing to pick which book we're gonna do, and like more often than not, they land on horror, and yeah, and he's gotten to the point where like every horror book we do, he's like, man, I love this book. This is like the greatest thing ever. I'm like, Bob, no, the problem is you love horror books. You just don't think you do. Like, they're so amazing. But yeah, he's going to be stoked to check this out too. So I'm really excited to talk about it. But yeah, man, let's talk about the book. Let's talk about you for a second before we get into that. Again, you're Derick Jones. You're currently, this book has come out from Reptile House Comics, and it's like you put out another book through them like a little while ago, or worked on a project with them. And yeah, how did you get hooked up with them? And let's talk about your start in comics as well.
Yeah, so I got hooked up with Reptile House. Nick, who's a publisher, he used to come to these meetups that we would do when I lived in Philly. And he was like this awesome inker. Like, he's an amazing artist himself. He actually just put out a book as well. Like, we kind of did it together through his publisher. But yeah, man, like, he was doing a anthology. It was like a quarterly anthology where he was having just Philly artists in it. And I was in it for one issue, and then I had to move to Chicago, and I just like never got back to that story. I got busy with some other stuff. So I was always just like, damn, dude, I let Nick down. Like, I was supposed to be in every single one of these, and I let him down. And I thought he was actually mad at me about it. But then he came out to Chicago, and he was like, dude, I don't care. I love your stuff. Like, he's like, I was like, you all right? Well, I got something I'm working on now. Like, do you want to maybe publish that? And he's like, fuck yeah, let's do it. So
awesome.
That's how that came about. I've usually had to like the last 2 years, I've been trying to write and draw my own stuff more, and pitching has just been such a pain in the ass, man. Like, I've done pitches before with other people, and like I guess it's less of like it's less bad when you hear the no when it's just you and someone else, but when it's all you, you're just like, oh my god, I'm such a loser. So it was finally nice to have something just be like, yeah, dude, I love you. We'll publish it. Let's go. So it was rad.
Yeah, and they look to be a really cool publisher. I wasn't familiar with them until reading your book here and then checking out their site and some of the other stuff they put out. But
yeah,
some really, really cool stuff. It kind of like for you guys who haven't checked it out yet, it kind of like totes the line of like it has like that indie like zine vibe to some of it, and then but it's like such a good mix. Like, it's not I don't mean that like as like photocopy and like lo-fi by any means. Like, it's just got this cool like underground comics type of vibe to it, but it's done like really, really well. And this book, Nosebleed, which again, like, I'm just gonna keep teasing until we actually talk about it, but it's kind of the same thing. Like, it's this like, I don't know exactly how to describe it. Like, it's got this really appealing like indie vibe to it, but it's done so well, and it's so slick, and it just looks amazing. Like, the artwork in it is so sick, and the story is really, really cool too. So I'm just so stoked to talk about this book. But how about getting started in comics? Pre Reptile House or pre you guys working together.
Yeah, so I got my start back in 2014. Actually, I got my start in 2012. I did 2 Kickstarters of books that I wrote that were just they were like one. I don't know if you're familiar with one-man anthologies. Like, it's like kind of in the indie world where like somebody will put out like a book and it's just like a bunch of short stories, but it would be like 40 to 50 pages. Yeah. So I did 2 of those, and then I worked for Boom. I did a horror series called Plunder for them. I worked, and then after that, I jumped around from just being like a gun for hire, like IDW and stuff. And then I did 2 books for Z2, 2 graphic novels called Young Blood and the Riddling Club. And after that, man, I kind of was just like, I was like really just like out of it with like, I had to do like so much work for these books that would just like, they would come out and like, they wouldn't really like push them a lot. It was just being like a part of this weird wheel that like I just really wasn't feeling. And I was like, I really want to get back to like writing and drawing my own stuff and kind of going back to like my indie roots. Not that I ever got like super mainstream or anything, but like dabbled with like the mainstream publishers as much as they would let me. And so yeah, like ever since probably about 2020, 2021, I've been just like really involved with like the projects that I do now. So like last year I did a book with another horror book with my buddy Eric Freitas called Urges, and we kickstarted that, and we've just been like really just getting into like self-publishing and just like really trying to find like other like indie publishers to kind of like mess around with, just because it's just like, I think there's like this kind of like this lie that you get told that like if you work for like a big publisher, like all you got to do is just draw. And it's totally a lie, man. Like, you have to do everything that you'd have to do as like an indie guy. You know what I mean? And I just figured like, if I'm going to be doing all that work anyway, like I might as well just be in control of like as much of this shit as possible. So at least if it fails, it's like, oh, it failed because I said I was going to send emails out and I didn't. And no one heard about the book. Whereas like I did this book for this big ass publisher, and like 5 people read it because they got lazy for some odd reason and didn't push it for whatever reason. So yeah, that's where I'm at now. And I got to start with Nosebleed. Actually came from Philly Art Blog, which is like a art blog in Philly that has like a small comic section. They have like 3 or 4 comic book artists on there. They hit me up and they were like, hey, like we'd like to bring you on board. You got any ideas? And I was like, well, I've got this horror book that I'm pretty sure you're gonna say no to this, but this horror book about kids that get psychic abilities and they get like revenge on their bullies, and then from there it just spirals out of control as like they're trying to learn how to use their powers and just like the craziness that happens when you get psychic powers. And I sent them the first 2 pages of Nosebleed and they were just like, yeah, let's do this. And I was like, holy shit, okay. Because like everything else on Philly Art Blog is very slice of life indie comics. Like it's like, you know, just cool, really funny, really mellow slice of life stuff. And I guess they're like willing to take the chance. And every month, so it comes out, it's been coming out every month in like 5-page chunks since last April. Mm-hmm. And every month I kind of try to push it a little bit. Like, you know, I made one of the villains that you'll see more in book 2. He's like really racist. And I was just like, well, let's see how far I can kind of push that, you know, or like just the gore, like, you know, the amount of gore in this book is pretty wild. And like they've just been so cool to work with, man. Like they're like, yeah, dude, let's go. Like, so it's been really fun to kind of like get back in control of like your career as much as you kind of can in comics. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Sure. I think that's a lot of, like a good point, you know, that a lot of people don't think about, you know, looking at comics from, I don't know, that lens or whatever. A lot of times you would think as a creator, you know, you want to hop onto that DC book, that Marvel project, you know, maybe something, an Image, whatever. And yeah, while like it seems like the dream and it seems like the right thing to do and all that, I mean, you're right. They have a few projects that they really, really push. Everything else kind of gets swept under the rug or off to the side. And then they, you know, you end up with, hey, I had this idea for like a, you know, 25 book story arc or something. And then, you know, it gets condensed down to like 4 issues or whatever. And it gets, you know, canceled before its time or whatever. A lot of times not being in control of that stuff really, really sucks. And the stuff that you're seeing is just like the tip of the iceberg of all the stuff that, you know, just didn't happen or whatever, or didn't happen right. So yeah, I think, you know, working for indie publisher, doing your own thing, there's a lot of merit to that. So yeah, I think that's awesome. I've talked to, excuse me, a lot of creators who, you know, when I first started interviewing people and I didn't know what to say, I didn't know what questions to ask and stuff like that, I'd come up with, you know, these little documents that are like, all right, I'm going to hit on this point, this point, this point. And something I would ask everybody at the beginning was like, all right, if you landed like this big gig at, you know, DC or Marvel, you know, what character would you want to work on and blah, blah, blah. And it was like overwhelmingly, you know, I think I remember back to like one of my first interviews was Tyler Crook. Yeah. And super, super awesome guy. I mean, really cool. And he kind of does the same thing. You know, he writes and then illustrates and all of that as well. And, you know, I was like, all right, you know, you landed a 2-year contract at the big T, you can write whatever you want. And he's like, nah, I don't really want to, you know, I kind of want to do my own thing. So just really interesting, something that, you know, the outsider perspective, you wouldn't think of, you know, you wouldn't think, you'd imagine everybody wants to write Spider-Man or Batman, but while, you know, I don't think too many people would object to writing Spider-Man or Batman, having to work for DC or Marvel is not everybody's ultimate goal. So
yeah, and I have buddies that have like crossed over and been in that mill for years, and like nobody has a good story. You know what I mean? Like nobody has like a, oh yeah, man, you'll love it. They're like, well, it started out pretty cool until like my editor got kicked off my book like halfway through the first issue, and then I got a different editor each book, and they lied to me. They said they were going to do this and then they didn't. I was just like, Jesus Christ, this is brutal.
Yeah. Like, wait, is this the world I want to end up in or what's going on here? Yeah. Well, again, you know, that's something that you're not going to see like a lot out of the bigger publishers or whatever is somebody just, you know, really hands-on, really excited to get your story out there and kind of let you do your thing, you know. Like you said, there's so many editors, there's so many people kind of tearing it apart and everything like that. And I imagine, you know, working with somebody like Reptile House to put this book out, you know, they're like, awesome, we love it, do your thing. So yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please, you're good. I want to get into the book. Like I'm really stoked to talk about this book. So you kind of talked about how you had some ideas and you communicated those to sorry, tell me who it was again. I'm sorry, I completely forgot.
Philly Art Blog puts it out.
Philly Art Blog. Okay, my bad. Yeah, so you got that out to Philly Art Blog and started there and everything with the first 2 pages. How much of this did you have fleshed out before you really started working on it? Were you coming up with the story as you were going? Like, tell me that story.
I had nothing beyond those first 2 pages.
That's the sign of a good creator is what I'm saying.
Yeah, right. Like everybody, the funny thing is like everybody you think who has their shit together does not. Mm-hmm. They're just like winging it, you know. But so I hired an editor. I hired like Nancy. Oh man, I probably shouldn't. She goes by NM Scurry. But I hired her. I found her through Instagram because like a big thing that's always happened when I've always started these like projects in the past was like I could only get so far. I could get to like page 15 maybe, and then I'd hit like a plot hole or something, and like the plot hole I would just be spinning, and then I would just give up on the project and just be like, oh, I got to go find some work, you know? So I really didn't want that to happen this time because I signed a contract with them, and they're like, we need something every month. So I was like, fuck it, dude. I'm just going to get an editor. I'm going to finally do it. And I found her, and like we sat down, and we just like, I was like, okay, here's my word vomit draft of like everything I think I want to happen. And she went through it and just kind of was like, comb through it and just help me really understand like that every story is just like about your theme, right? Like if you ever get lost, just go back to your theme. And like it was just like just a head explosion, literally. Like
yeah, about to say that may or may not happen in the book, but
right, spoiler alert. But yeah, man, she really helped just flesh it out. And then after that we kept it really loose because I don't really like to write out full scripts because I also really didn't have the time. And so she was just like, all right, let's just write some tent poles. Like these are just moments that you want to get to. And every month you'll just aim to try to get to that moment. And we did that. We wrote that out for like 12 months worth. I knew I wanted at the end of the year to have a 40-page book. So, and with like change to maybe do book 2 and book 3, and that's basically where we got to. And yeah, from there it was just winging it every single month. I would always kind of loosely write. I'd refer back to like my my tent poles, as we called them, and then I would thumbnail a lot first of like all the cool shit that I wanted to draw, and then I would kind of go back and then like write. So it was kind of like this weird backwards kind of way of working with that, like which I then retooled later on in the process to kind of be like, okay, write out what the characters are going to be saying first, because that's going to infer my thumbnails a lot better. So this whole book, man, was just like, this is like my 10th year of making comics, and it was like kind of going back to like year 1 of just like relearning everything. And it's definitely made me a better cartoonist after the fact, man. And I've been telling all my buddies now that like are indie guys, I'm like, dude, even if you're doing like some auto bio, like jokey shit, like hire an editor, man. Like it's so good to just like we meet every Friday and like we just chat about the story. And it's just good to have like that outside ear that you're also paying. That's just not like your friend. That's going to like, because if you're like, you have friends, right, that you can be like, hey, what do you think of this? And they're like, hey, this sucks. And it's like, well, are you saying that because it sucks because like we're having ego issues, or like does it actually suck? So it's a lot better to have like an eye that you're paying, that she's just literally there to help me make this story better. So anything she says, I was like, okay, this is coming from a sense of like, this is going to make this better. And it always has, man. So yeah. Hopefully that
very
answered
cool.
the question.
Very, yeah, no. And one of the things that I always like to point out here is, I mean, you know how the comic book community works. A lot of times, the people listening to these podcasts, watching YouTube shows, all of that stuff are like, you know, they really want to hear a creator's perspective on things. Really important to them because a lot of the comic book community is, you know, aspiring creators. Like a lot of times, you know, what you're saying right now, you got some 13-year-old kid or whatever, you know, tuning into the podcast and they're like, all right, man, this is how Derick Jones did it. So, I mean, you know, it's just, it influences so much of the up and coming, you know, comic book illustrators, writers, all of that stuff, future editors, everybody. So, I love that. I always think that, you know, anytime I hear a piece of advice from a creator, I'm like, it's gold. You know, I mean, I never broke into writing, but, you know, like I've written a lot, and like that's, you know, hearing you say that is advice I never heard, because, you know, you're talking about themes and stuff. Well, I always come up with these great mental images, you know, for scenes and stuff. I'm like, all right, I want to see this. I want to do this. I want to put this in my story. But I mean, you strip it down and I try to have like some kind of like theme or like point to my story. I'm like, I kind of missed the boat on that part. So, yeah, great to hear that kind of thing. A lot of our listeners are really, you know, up and coming creators. So yeah, really awesome advice there. So how about the story itself then? Where does it originate from? You've got, I don't know. I'm kind of like torn if I kind of want to break down what happens in this book or not, or let it be a surprise. So I'm not going to say, I won't say too much, but you've already touched on some of the themes of it. So there's definitely, you know, some like schoolyard bullying going on. And there's some psychic powers, some real big powers that manifest. And where did that come from? Was that just an idea you had and then you fleshed out? Was that something bigger? Like, where'd the idea for the book come from?
It came from a couple places. Like I grew up, I had like issues growing up being like bullied and stuff, and I've always wanted to do something with that. Sure. I didn't know if it was going to be like autobiographical or just like, I wanted to use it some way without it being like a, you know, like a virtue signaling or like, you know, I don't know, like an anti-bullying book or like a, you know, oh, woe is me kind of book.
Yep.
So it's always been in the back of my head. And like, I've always like, I grew up loving like Akira, you know, anything with like a psychic abilities in it, like Stephen King's Firestarter.
Oh yeah.
A lot of like 90s OVAs always just had psychic abilities, and that's just kind of just been in my toolkit of like, I really want to do this one day. And like, this was just finally like the chance. I was like, well, they're probably going to say fucking no. So let me just pitch it. And so once I had the keys, you know, the keys to the ignition, man, I just put it in. And I just really like, cause like growing up, like I was on like a lot of pills and stuff for like ADHD and everything like that. And the reason why Akira stuck out to me so much is because it was like Tetsuo gets that pill addiction because, you know, he needs that pill to control his powers. And I kind of was like always hoping that would happen to me as a kid, because I would get really bad headaches and stuff. And I'm like, oh, cool, maybe I get psychic abilities, but it never happened. But like, yeah, it's kind of, I've always just wanted to play in that playground, because the other thing too, man, there's not that much like psychic stuff out there. Like there's like Firestarter, the Scanner series, Carrie, what else? Like Akira, obviously, but then like after that, it's like a really like not touched genre, you know? So I really wanted to just be like, all right, like I don't really have that much like competition, I guess. I mean, I do. I mean, Akira is like, you know, everybody that's read the book has just been like, oh, you like Akira. And I'm like, well, actually, I kind of like Domu more. It's kind of a little bit more Domu-esque more. But just having like the low bar. It's not like I'm making a superhero story where it's like, okay, everybody knows what's going to happen. You know, there's the origin, how he got his powers, everything. So it was kind of like fun being able to kind of play in this playhouse and not have like this rule book, you know what I mean? Because like all the other genres kind of have like a certain rule book of what you have to kind of hit on in order to kind of stay in that genre. And this was like, I guess it's just been, I hate to sound artsy, but it's just been in me. Like I've just really wanted to do a freaking psychic book so badly. So yeah, I just I guess I pulled from I really like revenge stories. Originally Nosebleed was just going to be, since it was coming out once a month, and they were actually only paying me for one page, but I was just like, I don't want to have a 9-month contract and at the end of it I only have 9 pages. That's stupid. So I just give them extra pages. And what it was originally going to be how the book starts, but then every chapter, every month was just going to be from a different kid's perspective, kind of like Rashomon. And we're basically trying to slowly, like, they're interviewing all these kids that were there at that incident to kind of figure out like how this happened. But then, like, as I was like thumbnailing that out, I was like, I'm gonna have to draw that opening sequence like 50 times. Like, I was like, I'm gonna get so bored of drawing that, I'm gonna go nuts. So that's when I kind of figured out the narrative stuff. But like a lot of the narrative stuff just kind of just came from talking with my editor, but just a lot of it just came out of nowhere, man. Like it was so weird. And I think the thing that kind of helped with that was just having that monthly deadline where it's just like, okay, like, you know, trust your gut. Like that's the, when I would sit down to write or thumbnail, like some of the stuff would just keep coming. And I'm like, okay, I guess this is clearly where this story wants to go, or that's clearly where this character wants to go. And I just kind of like followed it along, you know?
That's one of the things that I really love about the story. And you point out there, you know, like your phrasing, that's where the character wanted to go and stuff like that. It's God, I would have so much trouble like even verbalizing what happens here, but like it's so organic, you know, the way that the story takes place and the way that the perspective kind of jumps, the way that, you know, who's in charge of the narrative in that moment, like who's talking, whatever, in control of that dialogue, you know, what's going on and everything. It shifts so much and like such a cool organic way. It's not really something that I can think of that, you know, I've seen a lot of or anything like that. Like it's done really well, and it's done really well without like a whole bunch of exposition or anything. Like you show a lot on the page. And I really appreciate that. That's one of my favorite things in the entire world. I don't crack open a comic to read a novel, you know. I want the art side of it, and you've definitely fulfilled that in this book. But yeah, no, of course, thank you. But the dialogue works very well too, because these characters are like fleshed out. You know, you feel close to them right from the start. You talked a little bit about the opening scene, and I'm not going to spoil it at all. Like I don't want to talk about exactly what happens there. People like trust me when I tell you guys, like you have to read this book, and the second that you open it up, you're going to be like, oh shit, I'm in. Like, where's issue number 2 right away? But
it's coming.
That's amazing. But yeah, the way that this book opens is excuse me, it's a lot of times, even with a lot of indie books that I've read and stuff like that, a lot of horror books and everything, there's a little bit more like backstory or whatever, like before you get thrown into something like that. And I'm going to be very vague on purpose. Again, like I said, I do not want to give anything away here, but I think that is my favorite thing about this book. Like you open it up, you read those first couple of panels, and like there's no turning back. Like you're not like tricking me. You're not showing me like a scene of something or a shot of something and then going to dive back into some backstory or some character development or anything. Like, no, this hits the ground running and takes off right from that second. I love that, and I feel like it's like such a unique way to tell a story, and it's just not something that I see a lot of. Did you always know you were going to begin the book this way? Like I know you talked about some different things there, but yeah, please tell us about that.
Yeah, it comes from 90s OVAs, you know, like you just get thrown into that world, you know, like Demon City Shinjuku. All of a sudden it starts with this crazy ass fight scene with these 2 dudes fighting over a city, and one of them gets split in half, and then you're just like, what the fuck? There's no backstory. And like I love that shit, man. Like, because I like that it's just like those guys just trusted the audience to just be like, you can figure this out. Like we're giving you what you need, but we're also not expecting you to be dumb. And that's like the thing I hate so much about like a lot of like mainstream books. And I don't want to sound like a dickhead, like an indie guy that's like, oh, mainstream sucks. But it's like you'll pick up these books that have this awesome premise, and you're like, oh shit, this is sick. And then like the next 3 issues are just like backstory and exposition and all this stuff. And it's like, dude, I'm not dumb. Like I can just go with what you just gave us. Like you just keep that. So that's something I really wanted to try too, because I've read so much, you know, you read just so much stuff where it's just like it's like they think that the audience is dumb, and I really think audiences are smart, especially if you're reading books. Like you're smart, you can kind of put context clues together, or you can kind of, I like when people leave it a little bit open to just being like, oh, is that what's going on, or like, oh, maybe this is actually happening, or like, you know what I mean? Like I think it's good when you're giving, like when you leave a movie or a comic with questions, like everything doesn't have to be answered. Like I don't need to know everything about Tetsuo to know that he's a bad kid, you know what I mean? Or like he's a you know, he's a piece of crap, or that Kaneda is, you know, the strong dude. It's just like, yeah, show me him being strong and great. And then like the other thing too, man, that I really tried to go for with that is I hate when you read a comic book and the artist does the job, but then the writer goes over top of that and goes, and he threw a punch that was so hard that flew through the window. And then literally the artist did that. It's like, okay, dude, like you either don't need anything there and just let the artwork speak for it, or write some cool shit that like I wasn't even going to think of. But so this was my chance to kind of do that and like really show the audience like, hey man, I got you, you know, like come on this ride. The other thing too that kind of leads into that is like a lot of my audience, my audience is like people that don't really read comics like me and you do. Like they're not lifers. They're people that kind of will find me at like a punk rock flea market, or they'll find me, you know, I don't know, selling at like some weird like event where there's not really comics there. And I want them, I'm always thinking of that person when I'm working on stuff, that they can just pick up a comic book for the first time and not have to worry about where to look and where to go and what's happening. Like, you know, we get some of these like big name DC books, or oh, geez Christ, I just named DC, big name book where like the artwork is so sick, but like you have no idea where to look. It's like I've handed books to my girlfriend and she's just like, you know, what the fuck, like what's going on? Like I don't even know what's going on. So I just really try to think about the audience coming into this, and I try to think of this as their first book without having to do like the splash page where the character's like, my name's this and this is what I'm good at. And you
know. Right. I mean, there would be such a different you know, I guess, you know, there's a million different ways to tell this story, but but if you did it, you know, like that, if you had our character at the beginning, you know, kind of explaining those things, if you had that exposition, if you went back to, well, this is how we got to where we are here on this first page, yeah, I think it would take a lot away from the story. It would take a lot away from, you know, the appeal of the story, at least for me. And it is, you know, at the very least, you know, all I can speak for is this first issue so far, but you know, in this first issue, a really compelling story. There's a lot here to unpack. Again, I read it 3 times, you know, since you sent it to me, and it's just, you know, every time I'm looking at it, there's more. You know, I'm getting more out of the art. I'm getting more out of the dialogue and all the nuance and everything that's there. I honestly can't wait to see it, you know, in person, because just it's going to shine so much more than it does digitally, and it's going to be like reading a whole nother comic at that point. But yeah.
I can't wait till you get your copy, man. You look really good on this one.
Oh God, amazing! I can't wait for it. But yeah, it's just I think kind of I don't know if I had to paraphrase what you were saying there, like trusting your audience. You know, it comes down to trusting your audience. You know, giving them something to like kind of chew on, and trusting that, you know, they're going to take that and absorb that in their own way. You know, maybe they're going to come up with a little bit of backstory for some of these characters themselves if they want to paint that picture or whatever, or maybe they're more like a reader like me, and they're like, I don't need to know any of that. I want to know what's happening right now in this story, and where it goes from there and everything. So yeah, there's just a lot you can do with it, especially whenever you really do trust your audience. So I think that's like one of the things that makes this book so good. And, you know, before I continue talking about how much I love this book, let's talk about, one of the most amazing things about this book, the art, because again, it's written so well, and I love the story. I love the dialogue. The art in this is phenomenal. It's so cool. You have such a cool, unique style. Like as far as illustrating, who are you inspired by? Who are some of your biggest inspirations?
Oh man,
hard question, I know, but
how much? Well, it's like how much time do you got? You know,
we got all night, man. Come on, the eclipse is over. Come on, keep it coming.
Oh man, all right, I'll let it out. Big influences, man, is like Daniel Warren Johnson. I've loved his shit since like 2014. But even before then, like I'm a really big indie guy. Like I love Adrian Tamina, I love Charles Burns, I love Dan Clowes, I love the French, I love Alain Dodier, Mobius, Inky Bilal, like, so it's like those guys, Paul Pope, Ronald Wimberly, Becky Cloonan, man, it's like kind of trying to combine all of those people into something that I love, like all their styles. So I'm always kind of trying to mesh all that into one. But I really, for this book especially, like we went to France last year, like right before I started it, and I really hadn't been looking at like bande dessinée stuff for a really long time, and we went over there, and I was just blown away by like the comics culture in France. Is like, it's killer. It's like it's not a subculture over there. It's like a part of their culture. Like everybody reads comics over there. Wow. And just to see it everywhere, and you're not looked at as like a weirdo for going into a comic store, or when you get into the comic store, like they're not trying to like, please buy these books, you know, like it was so cool, man. And just seeing like all that stuff again, and like just getting back into like, I went over there and I got right back into like, I hadn't looked at Mobius stuff in forever. I hadn't looked at any Hergé stuff in forever. And I looked at all that stuff, and I was like, oh man, when I get back, like it just reinvigorated me. And the other thing too that kind of like helped out a lot with this book was I watched this video on straights versus curves. Just like a tip for artists, like it's a concept that's mostly in like cartooning, where it's like one side of the body, it's like one side of whatever you're drawing is straight, and then the other side is curved, so you can have contrast, but it's not as black and white as that. And I always thought that's what it was, and it never really like sunk into me. But I watched this Aaron Blyce video where he was like, no, it's not that. It's like straight, meaning one side is less complex, maybe a moment of rest, and the other side is curved, meaning like you can go crazy with like whatever the details you want to do. And like it just finally clicked. And I started doing that in this book, and really just trying to like, I've always wanted to draw dot eyes on my characters too. It was like the Hergé stuff, you know, it was really coming back. And I was just like, I want this book to like, I want the horror moments to really pop. And like, I felt like in my older stuff, like I did this book last year called Urges, where I drew everything. I just overdrew everything. I made everything gritty. I made everything just like really, like I was really trying to prove that I'm a draftsman. And I felt like the gross moments, or like the moments of gore, didn't really pop because everything was drawn. So I was kind of like, all right, like maybe if I draw like a little bit more cartoony, a little bit more loose, maybe those gore moments that happen will be like, whoa, what the fuck? I thought I was reading like an indie comic. And like all of a sudden there's just black blood going everywhere, and there's like these gruesome moments happening. So I was really trying to push that and like trying to figure that out during this whole book of just like, okay, like keep it. I really wanted this to like be like an indie book for sure. Like, you know, to look like an indie book, to feel like an indie book, but also be like, damn, did Vertigo put this out? Like, you know, like, oh shit, this is crazy. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, exactly though. I mean, there's some fabulous art in here. There's some, you know, just crazy moments in this book. You know, you touched on like, you know, some of the, I mean, I'm not going to say you said the word gore, but you know, there's like, there's like a good amount of scenes in here where, you know, if you're not prepared for, you know, you're like, oh shit, you know, where did that come from? That's insane. it really comes across like very well, again, with the story being so well written and the characters feeling very developed and everything. It's almost like, surprise attack, you hit those moments very well and you hit them in the right spots and everything. So just some really good quality stuff here. Some
Thanks, man.
no, thank you. The listeners, you guys are really going to enjoy this book. I know I'll be, definitely recommending this to everybody and sending as many people as I can over to your site to grab a copy. Let's talk about the marketing for it really quick. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know you're vacationing, so again, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me while you're out there doing your thing. But well, thank you. Fun. But yeah, let's talk about the marketing for the book. I know you can hop on to DerickJonesArt.com and check out a little bit of Nosebleed there. You can see the cover and everything and get the details on the book. You got your solicit and some quotes and everything as well. But you can grab a copy there. Yep. Where else can people find a copy? Like, are you hitting any conventions? Like, what's going on with this thing?
Oh man, mostly my Etsy page right now. I can see the link for that, and Reptile House Comics, they have a bunch. And they're actually in like a bunch of like indie stores like around the country right now. As far as conventions, I really wish I was hitting a bunch. I'm actually about to move to New York, so I'm moving to New York in like June. So I'm gonna miss Heroes Con. I'm gonna miss SPX. I'm gonna miss every convention basically, because I'm also going to like Albania in like September. So
nice.
I mean, if there's any that I can hit, I'll definitely hit them up. I just got into CXC and I can't go to that too. So, but Nick at Reptile House will be at a lot of the shows, and you can pick it up from him there. And yeah, man, I'm working on book 2. Book 2's already 15 pages in. You can actually read the new chapters because they're coming out monthly. So if you like book 1 a lot, you can go see what book 2's up to already right now. And yeah, I wish I was doing some fucking conventions, man.
Hey, you're good. I mean, I think I'm not going to be able to go read the monthlies on this. I'm going to have to wait for issue number 2 to come out because my God, I'm one of those readers. I've got to have it all in the big chunk. But yeah, for you guys out there who can brace yourselves and read a small part at a time, where can they find that?
On phillyartblog.org.
phillyartblog.org. Awesome. Okay.
Let me see if that's actually, hold
up. I'll verify everything and link everything in the show notes as well. So yeah, I'll make sure that's there. Your Etsy page, Reptile, everything, your site as well.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Like I said, guys, this is a very limited print run. We've got printed 500 copies.
Yeah.
I assume that these will be gone pretty quick. So make sure that make sure you guys hop on Derick's site, hit that Etsy page, grab the book from wherever the hell you can grab it from. Like Derick said, it's in a few indie shops quite a few indie shops around the country. So, if you can find them in person, even better. But yeah, only 500 copies out there. So make sure you get a copy of that. Derick, again, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk to me today. And I'm not going to take up any more of your time. So I'm going to let you vacation out there, have fun and everything. Anything else you want to say to the listeners before we go?
Dan, dude, thank you so much, man. Let me tell you something. This show fucking rules. Because you read the book 3 times. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. Like, I felt like we actually, some people will like read it once and then they jump on and it's like, man, but you asked some really great questions. I can't wait to check out the rest of the episodes. You guys are on like episode 65. So I'm going to go back and chew through all the episodes. Thank you to everybody that's bought a book so far. This is awesome. Thanks for coming on this ride with me. And I hope I can keep scaring you with the next couple books. So yeah.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Derick. Again, appreciate it. Guys, that is Nosebleed from Derick Jones. Make sure you check the show notes for all those links. And Derick, thank you again.